Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Our top story: the struggles for major American brands in China continue. We look into how the world's most populous market is shaking up American businesses like Starbucks. Are American human rights at risk of a CCP-style crackdown? A new report revealing the Chinese Communist Party is scheming to spark a U.S. government-led crackdown on Falun Gong groups, echoing the persecution they face in China. A daughter who lost her father under the Chinese regime's iron fist, now advocating for the values that her father gave his life to defend. More on her story.
There's a mission behind what we do.
And talking about sports could get some social media users arrested inside China for what appears to be the first time Chinese police arrested a woman after she posted criticism of a Chinese Olympian on social media. American consumer giants like Starbucks and General Mills are getting tripped up, and the problem's name is China. NTD's Sean Marshall explains how a slowdown and fierce local competition in the country are shaking up the U.S. brand's fortunes.
Earnings reports for several big-name American brands highlight struggles in the Chinese market. Johnson & Johnson saying China is a very volatile market. Apple said China's sales falling by 6.5% year-on-year. McDonald's saying consumer sentiment in China is quite weak.
China's economy is going through growing pains at the moment. They've had a systematic real estate bubble, essentially. The stock market is in a little bit of disarray. And so that's essentially decreased the purchasing power of many Chinese consumers. It's decreased their confidence in the economy. And they're not confident that their jobs are going to be there in the future, that their incomes are going to keep increasing.
On Wednesday, German sportswear maker Puma shares dropped to 2018 lows, citing higher freight costs, currency headwinds, and continued muted consumer sentiment in China. Yang says American companies have also faced increased competition from domestic Chinese brands over the years.
So initially, when American brands entered the Chinese market, they were unchallenged. This was back when China didn't have its own brands to compete.
Sharpie pen maker Newell Brands is moving some production of kitchen appliances out of China and has relocated manufacturing for its writing business to Tennessee. Its CEO saying uncertainty around tariffs ahead of the U.S. presidential election was the catalyst for the move. But not all brands are struggling in China. Ralph Lauren beat first quarter profit estimates on Wednesday. Steady demand for its pricey denims and polo shirts in Europe and China helped balance out slower sales in the U.S. Ralph Lauren's quarterly sales in Europe and Asia grew from last year, a stark contrast from lackluster earnings reports from European rivals LVMH, Hugo Boss, Burberry, and Gucci. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
The Chinese Communist Party appears to be ramping up its campaign to suppress the Falun Gong spiritual practice in the United States. Leaked documents in China reveal CCP officials directing social media influencers to turn the American public against the faith group. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has more from the State Department.
Newly leaked documents reveal that the Chinese Communist Party is stepping up its persecution campaign against the Falun Gong spiritual practice and Shen Yun, a New York-based performing arts company which shows what China was like before communism. The Chinese officials are doing this by directing social media influencers to attack Falun Gong here in the U.S. and thereby turning the general public against them. It's the latest effort by the Chinese Communist Party to eliminate the Falun Gong spiritual practice. Falun Gong, also known as Falun Dafa, is an ancient practice introduced to the public in the early 1990s. It combines meditation and gentle exercises with moral teachings based on truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. But due to its rising popularity, the Chinese Communist Party launched a persecution of the practice in 1999. Members of the practice are imprisoned in China and subjected to torture, brainwashing, and even forced live organ harvesting. And now, the CCP appears to be expanding its propaganda and disinformation. An August 7th report by the Falun Dafa Information Center found that the Chinese regime is initiating a campaign to eliminate Falun Gong and Shenyun Performing Arts, a New York-based classical Chinese dance group, many of whose performers practice Falun Gong. The report highlights leaked documents inside of China that finds that Chinese officials directed social media influencers and Western media outlets to spread misinformation to trigger a U.S. law enforcement response against Falun Gong practitioners. 3 whistleblowers leaked notes from a June meeting in China's Ministry of Public Security, finding that the Chinese officials ordered its agents to, quote, create and escalate the internal conflicts of Falun Gong to expand non-stop the fighting strength, depth, and reach of social media influencers targeting Falun Gong. They must attract the continuous attention of the entire United States society and force the U.S. government to strike on all fronts, eliminating the force of Falun Gong. We've reached out to the State Department for a response on this, but haven't yet heard back. Now, in the latest action to take action against the persecution of Falun Gong, in the Senate, U.S. officials have introduced the Falun Gong Protection Act, which would sanction any individual involved in the Chinese regime's forced organ harvesting of Falun Gong practitioners. A similar companion version of the bill passed the House back in June. Reporting from the Department of State, Jack Bradley, NTD News.
To discuss the CCP's escalating campaign against Falun Gong, NTD's Steve Lance sat down with Levi Browde. He's the executive director of the Falun Dafa Information Center.
Levi Browde, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me, Steve.
It's great to have you. So, Levi, if you could, just tell us what the Falun Dafa Information Center has been working on, and why does this new report that you have just released, what does it show us?
So for the last month, we've been working on a new report, which we just published yesterday. Essentially, it's built around multiple sources, primarily from the China's Ministry of Public Security, which demonstrate a new escalation and a focus on a global campaign to, in their words, eliminate Falun Gong in the U.S. and around the world. And this campaign really consists of sort of a social media-based swarming of disinformation, which they hope spills into mainstream media here in the U.S., as well as an activation of what appears to be a large network of spies to incite division within our community and here with the U.S. government.
And to your point there, I want to pull up a quote on the screen from your report. It says, mobilize concealed agents to create and escalate the internal conflicts of Falun Gong to expand nonstop the fighting strength, depth, and reach of social media influencers to target Falun Gong in Shenyun. It also goes on to say they must attract the continuous attention of the entire United States society and force the U.S. government to strike on all fronts, eliminating the force of Falun Gong. The above is from the Ministry of Public Security, a meeting held in 2024. It seems the CCP wants to create tensions within the Falun Gong community. What are these internal conflicts that they're referring to, and what does the activation of CCP agents by the communist regime mean?
Well, unfortunately, this is a tactic the CCP has used throughout its whole history. They're alluding to the idea that they would activate spies to act up here in the U.S. to try and gain the attention of the American public or the U.S. government. Well, we've known for many, many years from CCP's own documents, their own words, their own speeches, that Falun Gong is a top priority for them, both inside China and around the world.
And what do those unaware of this issue need to be cautious of? And what do you recommend they do not to fall prey to the CCP's false claims?
Well, I mean, they're attacking Western democracies at what is probably our most vulnerable point, the social media platforms. And the hope is they're seeding certain points into that propaganda that would be picked up by mainstream media. And I think that's really what they mean by trying to grab the attention of all Americans.
Levi Browde, really appreciate you sharing your insights here.
Thank you so much, Steve.
U.S. officials are voicing dissatisfaction over China's handling of a stabbing incident in China in June. The attack took place in the northeast part of the country, where an assailant injured 2 American college instructors. In a statement, U.S. Ambassador to China Nicholas Burns criticized Beijing for not providing details surrounding the suspect's motives. According to the New York Times, the assailant is facing a charge called picking quarrels and provoking trouble. But another U.S. official said that wasn't enough, given the charges often used by China to target political dissidents and handle small neighborhood disputes. In response, the regime's foreign ministry accused the U.S. of what they called interfering in the country's legal proceedings. Chinese authorities added it was an isolated case triggered by a physical collusion. Worth noting, Beijing also shied away from speaking about another attack on foreigners. In June, a 55-year-old Chinese woman was stabbed to death after trying to shield a Japanese mother and child from an assailant. Now let's turn to more demographic news about China. The country had the largest population in the world for decades until last year. Now, Goldman Sachs forecasts that in 6 years, China is likely to have twice as many urban pets than children 4 years old and younger. Goldman Sachs has been doing research on the market situation for pet food in China. The bank says that by 2030, the urban pet population will nearly double that of young children. More and more young people in China are choosing not to start families due to various social pressures, including financial constraints. Some say keeping a pet is much easier and cheaper than raising a child. It's worth noting that the ratio between young children and pets has changed significantly just recently over the past few years. In 2017, official Chinese data recorded there were 90 million children under 4 years old in the nation, more than double that year's pet population, estimated by Goldman Sachs, which was about 40 million. The Chinese Communist regime has extended its crackdowns on the country's fan culture. It's a term Chinese people use to describe certain behavior directed at celebrities. Beijing police arrested a 29-year-old Chinese woman surnamed He on Tuesday. The police accused her of defaming a Chinese table tennis player and coaches during the Olympic Games. The woman has been taken into custody. The details of exactly what she said in her social media comments have not been made available. Beijing is known for its online censorship and harsh regulations on speech. But outside politics and social issues, this appears to be the first time someone has been arrested for their opinion on sports. At least 3 major social media platforms in China have deleted or otherwise restricted thousands of posts and comments and suspended the accounts of hundreds of users in the name of what they call sorting out fan culture. Several state media outlets also publish articles condemning these behaviors. A powerful message from a principal dancer. The world needs truth, compassion, and tolerance. Ellie, dancer with Shenyun Performing Arts, says this is what her father courageously stood up for 20 years ago. Now she's revealing her story and her efforts to raise awareness about persecution of faith inside China through her dance. She witnessed her father being taken away by Chinese authorities multiple times until he was persecuted to death when she was just 4 years old. NTD's Flora Hua brings us more.
Born in China, raised in America, Ellie dedicates herself to studying classical Chinese dance and traditional Chinese culture even while living in the West. Ellie is a dancer with New York-based Shenyun Performing Arts. She started taking dance lessons in high school. Yuxin with NTD's Chinese language channel interviewed the award-winning dancer and her mother Lin Qian to learn more. Ellie's Chinese given name is Deru.
Hi, nice to meet you again. Lin Qian, Deru. When you dance on the stage, what's in your mind?
When I'm performing on stage, usually I just stay calm and focused. But behind all of this, there's a mission behind what we do. Basically, we want to tell the audience members that truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance is good.
Ellie's whole family believes in a spiritual discipline called Falun Gong. The system teaches the 3 principles of truthfulness, compassion, tolerance. It rose to great popularity in China, with many reporting better health and calmer states of mind. But fearing its growth, the Chinese Communist regime's then top leader outlawed the practice in 1999. Ellie's parents went to Beijing to appeal against the ban at the time. But little did they know the ban would become a brutal nationwide suppression campaign. Ellie's father was detained inside forced labor camps and mental hospitals several times. He was tortured to death in August 2004 at just 34 years old, leaving his 4-year-old daughter and wife alone. Chinese authorities continued to pursue Ellie's mother, so mother and daughter had no choice but to flee to Thailand, where they became refugees. Later on, the U.S. government accepted them. Ellie was 9 at the time.
On the windowsill, I saw my father being taken away by the police.
So your father hasn't come back since then?
Ellie's mother was detained at the time and didn't know that her husband had been arrested. Ellie said her father showed the regime that it can take away someone's job, family, or even their life, but it cannot take away their faith. Now, in the safety of the free world, she says she's found another way to carry on her father's legacy.
My dad, all he wanted to do was basically tell the Chinese government that Falun Gong is good. All I wanted to do was basically continue his wish of telling people truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance is good. Every year, basically, Shen Yun delegates this special contemporary piece that showcases what's going on in China right now with Falun Dafa practitioners, how we're being organ harvested, how we are facing a lot of brutality. We just want to tell the audience member that this is real and it's happening in China right now still, and we want to stop it.
Through her journey with Shen Yun, Ellie says she has learned more about her own culture and how to be a moral person.
What did you learn from performing Chinese classical dance at Shen Yun?
I have been dancing for 11 years, and the more I learn about classical Chinese dance, the more I realize that it's very, very profound. Because Chinese classical dance is part of ancient Chinese culture, and I realized that it's basically intertwined with one's morality. And in order to be good at classical Chinese dance, you have to be a very good person yourself, and you have to learn to be a more moral person. There's this very special trait in classical Chinese dance called Shen Yun, which is bearing. It's like a showcase of your inner spiritual realm. So you have to cultivate your inner self if you want to dance well in classical Chinese dance.
Does your mother support you?
Yeah, she supports me so much. I'm very proud of my mom. It's because when I first started dancing, I always called back home. I'm like, Mom, it's too hard. And my mom always said, you have to continue to do it, persevere.
Ellie has traveled with Shen Yun for years, performing on the world stage. Shen Yun aims to revive traditional Chinese culture before communism. The company's artists use a peaceful medium of the arts to raise awarenesses about the ongoing persecution against the faith group Falun Gong. Flora Hua, NTD News.
That's all for today's China in Focus on YouTube. We're now sharing a shortened version of our program here after being demonetized for 3 years. If you'd like to support us, consider donating. Find us at donorbox.org/China-in-focus or subscribe to our partner platform Epic TV, where you can watch our full episodes. Just click the link down below. Here's what to look out for in our second half. Panamanian border police making 15 arrests and a major trafficking bust. These people were reportedly caught moving illegal Chinese immigrants through the jungle to the U.S. southern border. The U.S., Australia, Canada, and the Philippines are staging a joint drill in the disputed South China Sea. The 2-day exercise promises to enhance navigation safety without directly naming one major player. And the U.S. surpasses China as Germany's biggest trading partner in the first half of the year. The European Union has accused Beijing of unfair trade practices. More on that after the break here on China in Focus. Thanks for watching China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. See you tomorrow.